In this original drawing by C.W. Jeffries, you can see a tall European man who is in the center of attention in the middle. There is a First Nations man in the painting, but he is set further back and is small, as if he is less important to the story. The European man looks out and sees everything he can take and gain without any thought of how it would affect the First Peoples. The question of this keystone was, what changed about the European powers' worldviews? I think the answer to this question is that when Europeans started coming into this new world, they thought of it as something to take from, but not to stay in. As the countries that they came from realized everything they could take from the land so easily, the people who originally came over, who had been making so much money, started losing money because what they had was no longer rare. They now realized that they could stay there and make more money and support themselves. In Keystone 2, we looked more at the European powers' change in worldview. To showcase this, I showed what I thought could have been the next moment, the consequence to the action shown in the first drawing. This drawing is more from the perspective of the First Nations man and what he thought of the situation. He looks surprised that the other men are inviting themselves into his home. You can see a whole community behind him, which is thriving. The European men are drawn in a thicker, darker ink in comparison to the rest of the drawing, especially the village, where you can see a sun shining down on them to symbolize how bright and thriving their community is. The European men are like a storm cloud coming across a sunny sky. Keystone 2's question was, what were the consequences of the European powers' change in worldview at the time? Through this question, you can see how when Europeans began to live in what is now North America, they either didn't think about the First Nations people who already lived there or didn't care. It resulted in the colonization of this land and the manufacturing in Canada. It also resulted in the fur trade happening more because Europeans needed furs for the long winters. On to Keystone 3. The main way colonization still affects us today is through treaties. Many of the treaties set up during the colonization of Canada are still in use. The reserves throughout Canada are results of treaties. This was supposed to make sure both groups lived in the same areas in harmony. Through fancy language, the government cloaked their greedy motives. Many of the other treaties were made about other legal matters that we may not directly see or know about, but they are still in act. The reserves are the obvious answer. There are still many other ways treaties and colonization in general affect us today. The question for this keystone was, what are some of the effects of colonization today? I think the answer to this keystone is that the effects are all around us, from the reserves to the land acknowledgements we speak before assemblies and other important meetings, to the treaties that are still in action today, to the fact that the Cocoqua people speak French, to the simple fact that any person who is not Indigenous lives here at all. All of this knowledge has led me to an answer for our driving question. What did European settlement mean for all involved? For the mother countries, it meant more resources and land to take control over. As colonization advanced, they manufactured more and more, making more money and accumulating more power. For the original explorers, it meant staying in this new world to continue to make enough of a profit. For the people still in Europe, it meant a chance at a better but hard life in the new world for a second chance, a new way of work. For the First Peoples, it meant losing almost everything they had, most of their numbers being infected by new sickness and dying, and all of them losing their freedom.